Welcome to Ink Outside the Box. I'm Robin.
And I'm Chaz. Today we're going to talk about tropes. We're going to look at what a trope is, why you maybe want to avoid them. We're going to identify some familiar tropes, give some examples, and some examples of tropes that maybe work better and examples of tropes that work not as well. So, Robin, do you want to tell us what a trope is?
So, the dictionary definition of a trope is a significant or reoccurring theme. And I'll put that up on the screen so you can see it. The thing about tropes is they're like wearing an old pair of shoes. They're comfortable, you know what to expect, and they're predictable. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what about a trope do you think, Chaz, would be good for people to avoid? And why do you think that?
One trope that comes to mind instantly is in a romance when the whole plot is centered around a character who hates another character because he's so mean, but he's really handsome, and she hates that he's handsome, and then they fall in love, and so that sort of, you can't say that Pride and Prejudice doesn't work.
The problem with that trope is that it has been done to death.
That's it.
And I think that some people, when they're reading, and I'm one of those people, if I see a trope starting to rise up, then I'm like, oh no, here we go again. Thinking that the writer's not going to have an imagination. And that's unfortunate, because I think that when people are writing tropes, I think it's just something that we kind of fall into. It's like when you're riding a bicycle on a bike track, you tend to go right down the middle where the other bikes have gone. It's easier. It's predictable. You know where the bikes are going to go. But if you go off track, it can actually make things a lot more interesting. We just finished a series on ITV called Gone that had David Morrissey and Eve Miles in it. And it was a murder mystery. I thought that I knew who did it, and then I wasn't sure. And then I thought I knew who did it. So whoever wrote that script knew what they were doing, and they knew what they had, because they stayed away from the trope. You think that it's going to be a trope when you start watching the series, but then they just turn it upside down. So give a couple of other examples. You mentioned the romance. I mentioned this TV series that we just watched. What would be another one that you would think would be a trope?
I seem to I've seen quite a few in recent years on the TV where the person you least expect in the story, so the really kind uncle or the copper, or the copper's boss or something, or the brother of the guy that's being accused, who's just so nice to everyone, which I find a little bit, is like, sometimes I start on episode 1 of a series and I'm like, he did it, he's too nice, and it turns out he did, because he's too nice.
I think the poison is prediction for me. I don't want to know who did it. I want to be kept guessing.
Well, I'm reading a book at the minute. I'm about half a dozen pages off the end. So it's the story of some siblings, and their dad, who's 76, sort of like springs on them that he's going to marry a 27-year-old, and they never get to meet her and all this. And so they're really suspicious of her all the way through. And like all the way through, you're thinking, is she going to have... Because he's been drinking herbal tea and losing weight. And it's like, it really does look like he's... she's going to have killed him. And then again, right at the beginning, I thought, oh, it's a book about relationships. It's not my cup of tea, but somebody had lent it to me, and I thought, I'll give it a go. And actually, I've really enjoyed it, not least because right at the beginning, I thought, oh, well, I suppose if the 27-year-old wife is going to turn out to murder him, it could give it a bit of interest. But actually, it's turned out better than that, because they flipped it on. All the stuff that the wife seems to have done throughout the book that makes her look really dodgy was actually not done by her. She was just a really nice woman. The dad was an asshole, so so that surprised me, pleasantly surprised me. I was like, this is better than I expected, just because of flipping that trope on its head. The suspicious wife wasn't as bad as they all thought. I mentioned the romance thing before. Pride and Prejudice is probably one of the original stories of
Yeah.
oh, Mr. Darcy, what a mean guy, who turns out, they turn out to fall in love, and that works.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Pride and Prejudice, even me,
Most
and I'm not a
most
romance
people most
lover.
people love Pride and
But
Prejudice.
well, if Colin Firth's playing Mr. Darcy, I don't care if I like romance or not. I'm
Right?
having it. Right. Anyway, but yeah, so I think what it really boils down to is, if it's well written, I
Hmm.
think you can get away. You can get. I mean, a trope, a recurring theme, isn't a bad thing. We've talked about this before, and we've discussed you can use fairy tale stories
Hmm.
or the Romeo and Juliet story and
Yeah.
change it and make it your own. And
Yeah.
of course, you can do that with any recurring theme. But yes, avoid predictability and
Yeah.
make it your own. If you're going to go down that road, you make it yours.
I think another
I think,
form of trope is what I call a formulatic series. Some of these have been adapted from books like Monarch of the Glen, for instance, Hamish Macbeth. I'm not sure if Doc Martin was from a book or not. I'll find out and I'll put it on the screen. And if it was, I'll put all these people who have written these books and who they're by on the screen so you can see them. But those are very similar in the way that somebody comes in from the outside. So you've got
yeah, a
in
close knit community.
yeah, you've got a very small isolated village, and you've got an outsider that comes in. Maybe he grew up there, or maybe she went to school there, and that kind of thing. And then they meet the crazy people in the village. They have a romance, they have emergencies all the time in Doc Martin, and you think, gosh, these people are very unlucky in this village in Cornwall. And then in Hamish Macbeth, there's a murder like every 5 minutes, and it's set in it was what was it? It was Loch Dew, wasn't it? Is that
Yes, yeah.
yeah, it was Loch Dew. And then
Yeah, I'm sure it was Lockdo, yeah.
it's tiny, tiny little village. I've been there. It was actually filmed in a village called Plockton, and it is very isolated. And it's tiny,
Yeah.
tiny. And you think if all those people had actually been murdered, there would be nobody left. And
Well,
then
now I'll tell you my feelings on Hamish Macbeth are kind of mixed, because I've read an awful lot of the Hamish Macbeth books,
right?
and they're not my favorite. But the TV series, I think they've made it their own. I mean, that what they've done with the TV series of Hamish Macbeth actually is take the idea of the book and then weave their own stories into it. Because,
Hmm.
like you say, if somebody died every
Yeah,
single week in a place that small, there'd be no one left living there.
yeah, yeah.
But Hamish Macbeth and Doc Martin as well have done a really good job of this.
Hmm.
They've got characters that you love,
Yeah,
so you're invested in, the weird couple that own the bar or the poacher. And I think that's again, they've made it their own. They've made it, even if it's not massively realistic,
yeah,
everyone's so lovable,
yeah,
in
yeah.
or dislike in their own way. And Hamish and Macbeth has also done. There was one episode where Hamish, he was on an island, he wasn't coming back, and they replaced him with another outsider police officer that had come into the village. And so Hamish Macbeth was an outsider, and he got on with everyone really well because he's a great guy. This other guy came in. He was not a great guy, and they just ripped him to bits. So there was they do that very well as well. Like the darkness, there's
Yeah.
always a dark side of a story, and
Hmm.
then absolute hilarity as well. So then, that Hamish Macbeth is just, it's a really good example of how they avoid making a trope into
Yeah,
a massive cliche,
yeah.
I
But
think.
it
So
does follow that formula that I was saying earlier,
it,
and
yeah,
so does
it really
so does
does. Yeah.
Monarch of the Glen. That was based on a novel by Compton Mackenzie, and it was about a man who moves back his ancestral home after leaving and running away. And of course, there's been a tragedy in the family, and he ends up having to take over and fix everything and that kind of thing. But again, you've got like the lovable, goofy people, and you've got the steadfast, straight character that doesn't ever play humor at all, but in itself is funny. Just like Doc Martin, he is as unfunny as anybody in that character, but he is actually, it turns it out that he's probably one of the funniest people because of his ridiculous
Mhm.
level of being so serious all the time and having weird things happening.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think that they are, if they would fit in the trope bucket, but they would also spill over a little bit into ways to fix tropes. So, as we said
yeah,
earlier, tropes are not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, you don't want to
yeah,
rewrite the same story over and over and over again. Okay, so let's just get past that. None of us want to do that. We want to write our own story. There's a time and a place for these formulaic stories, like I was talking about before. And there's a time and place for the comfy shoe, the romance, like you were saying earlier, the romance, like Romeo and Juliet. That instantly reminded me of West Side Story because it was a Romeo and
yeah.
Juliet kind of situation,
Same
but
story, yeah.
they kind of did turn it on its head because the endings were a little bit different, sort of. Juliet lived, or
And they chucked a bunch of
Romeo
songs
lived.
and dances in it as well,
Yeah, and
which
I didn't see too many songs and dances going on in the Shakespeare version. Uh, but there is a time and place for it, and if you can write it well, and like we were saying with like Doc Martin and Monica of the Glen and that kind of thing, if you can write it well and kind of maybe flip it once in a while and do something a little bit different, then you've got a winner. And you were saying a little bit
yeah.
when we were talking about how somebody like Anne Cleves with Shetland created a monster, really.
Yeah, I think there's like there's a zeitgeist, isn't there? There's
Yeah.
publishing houses go through phases of like, yes, we really, really want romantic, sexy vampires at the moment, and those people that get in there and put in a manuscript that matches what they're after at the moment. If you've written a sexy vampire at the right time, you're laughing,
Yeah.
And Anne Cleves, I think, did that when she wrote Shetland.
Hmm.
It sort of sparked off. I mean, there was already Midsummer Murders, I suppose, but Anne Cleves sort of sparked off a more serious. And
It
with her
is.
books, yeah. Look, I know someone whose son was a policeman on Shetland for
Oh,
5 years, and he told his parents that the worst crime he ever had to deal with was someone had robbed the post office. And I don't. I got the impression it was kids robbing the post office, not like
so you mean it wasn't
gangsters or
a
anything.
it wasn't
So
a drug baron robbing the post office
it
to pay
doesn't.
the people from killing his wife that they had kidnapped? No, no.
Yeah, it's contrary to popular belief. It doesn't seem like that much of that goes on up there. But it's so like for a writer who likes to write landscapes, who likes to write descriptions of nature, it's an absolute treasure trove.
Hmm.
Uh, Shetland, isn't it? And
It is.
and so I can totally see why she would. And I love the Shetland
I do
stories.
too. I've
Um,
never missed an
um,
episode of the series, and I've read several of the books. And she's an amazing writer. In our settings video, we talked about making your setting a character, and Shetland is most certainly a
yeah,
character in those
Shetland
novels.
really is
Absolutely.
absolutely a character.
Hmm.
Yes, very, very much so. But after that, because they were really popular, and I think the publishers were like, "Oh, yeah, write us some. We want to see manuscripts about murders in obscure places."
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really bad ones, awful ones. I pick up the book, and it's got a picture of somewhere stunningly beautiful, and I'm like, oh, nature and murder. And
Mhm.
you're like, actually, no, yeah, that's I shouldn't have bothered with that. Don't judge
No.
a book by its cover. I always do.
Not too long after I
Um,
started reading some of the Shetland books, I read a book that was called, and I can't remember who wrote it. And I probably shouldn't have said the name of the book. It was based in Orkney, and it was a police officer whose son was off at uni in Edinburgh, and he was dealing with a serial killer in Orkney. And I thought, that sounds awful like Shetland. Instead of we'll make it Glasgow instead of, we'll make it Edinburgh instead of Glasgow, and we'll put it in Orkney instead of Shetland, and nobody will know the difference.
No,
So
I mean
be
it is,
original if
and
you're
look,
going to
you
do
know,
that.
God bless some people probably do write a book, and then find that somebody else has had the same idea
Hmm.
and got
Hmm.
in there first. You
Hmm.
know, I'm not
Hmm.
saying that doesn't happen. My sister once said to me, you know, Charity, I sometimes feel like the whole world's a stage and we're just like actors in it. And I said, well, that's very good. But you know, Shakespeare said it first. And she was like, oh, damn it.
Few hundred
She was
years
only a kid.
ago.
She'd never heard that quote. You know, but she was absolutely gutted that somebody famous had got in there first. You know, she'd had an original thought, and turned out it
Bless
wasn't
her.
as original as she thought.
So there's a few things that we can do as writers to, if we are using a trope, and I mean, if we can get away from it altogether, then that's the best way. But if we can't, or if we find that we have a story that just won't leave us alone and we have to write it and it is kind of goes down the trope path, then there's different ways to change that, make it more original. And one of those ways is to subvert it, to turn it on its head. So, for instance, like the chosen one, instead of the chosen one comes in and accepts the job that needs to be done and does it and rises to the top and is the hero of the book, the chosen one decides, nah, can't be bothered. I'm not accepting the destiny, and doesn't. Not that eventually turns around and does it, but just says, no, somebody else can do that. No, thank you. I'm out. I'm gone, and just walk away. So that's one way to turn it on its head. And maybe find another character who can slide into that position and decide not to be the chosen one, but be the one that saves the day. That's one way. Can you think of another way to change that, to change a common trope?
Well, I suppose you could ask what if, couldn't you? Like, I suppose Good Omens by Terry Pratchett is a good example of this. Like, what if the Antichrist got born, but then was accidentally swapped at birth with a child who's the son of an accountant? So you can take what could be a trope, you know, the story of the Antichrist, you know, well,
Sure.
it's maybe not everyone writes about the Antichrist, but you know what I mean. You take
Most people do.
a well-known idea, and again, you could take the chosen one. You know,
Mhm.
the chosen one doesn't even realize he's the chosen one because he was swapped at birth. You know, so you can ask, what if something stupid happened
Mhm.
at the beginning of this story that means that it's got a completely different outcome? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that's one way of doing it. Do you have any other ideas?
Well, another option would be to say, take like the damsel in distress and make her just, she decides that she's going to save the day and actually ends up saving the hero instead of the other way around. Because, I mean, as long as I can
Yeah,
remember, there were cartoons where some villain had tied a damsel in distress onto the railway and waiting for the train to come along, and then this hero sweeps in and
yeah,
unties her and runs away just in time before the train, before the train goes by and would have killed her. But
yeah.
instead of that, the damsel in distress gets herself untied and actually saves the hero who's on his way and he's got his back turned to the train.
No, I think it works really well as an
Yeah.
example. Yeah. Likewise, Little Red Riding Hood could save the woodcutter. You know.
Yes, absolutely.
So
So you've got a lot of options. And like you were saying before in one of our other videos, you were talking about using fairy tales and modernizing them and putting them in, just like you just said, Little Red Riding Hood. You could take that trope and turn it into something really, really interesting if you put some imagination into it. And I think one of the ways to be able to do that is to read in your genre. Now, I know we've said this before, just like I've said that you want to move the story forward. I know you guys get sick of hearing me say that, but you want to read in your genre. If you decide that you want to write in a particular genre, then you need to make sure that you read as much as you can, good, bad, and ugly, to make sure that maybe you can
Yeah.
identify those tropes before you start writing in them.
Read different authors as well,
Absolutely.
because you might love one particular. I absolutely love Ian M. Banks as a science fiction author, and I've read all of his science fiction. I'm hoping that I'm wrong on that, and he's actually got another one squirreled away somewhere that I haven't heard of, but I don't think so. So I love him as an author. Also, when you read maybe Philip K. Dick and Ray Bradbury and like authors from further back, and then you can see, oh, a lot of his ideas have come from those earlier authors. Banks was writing in the 80s, well, I think he started in the late 80s, 90s, 2000s up until he died. When you read authors that were writing in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you can see where he got some of his ideas from, and you
Yeah,
can see
yeah.
how his imagination has taken a story and built on it, or he's got a little snippet from that one, a little snippet from that one, and he's made something amazing. And I think when not only does it give you ideas yourself
Yeah,
when you read in your genre, but if you only read one author that you love in that genre, if you then take their ideas, you're basically just nicking their ideas. Whereas if
that's
you
right.
read extensively, throughout
Yeah.
the genre, many authors, you get different ideas.
Another way that you can avoid going down that trope path, as we've been talking about before, is to get people that you trust, people in a reading group. We've talked about having other writers
Yeah,
that are readers as well, that, or even just like you said, your partner is a reader, not a writer, but he reads a lot. So to get feedback from
yeah,
people like that, and they may actually be able to identify a trope that you've missed. So that's as important.
absolutely, yeah,
You you want to make sure that you don't go down that path. You've voiced this to your feedback people and said, now if you see anything that's predictable, let me know, because I want to fix that, or I want to enhance it and
yeah.
make it something different. What we're going to do is, in the next video, we're going to talk about cliches. The best way for you to know when those new videos come out, and that happens to be on Mondays at 6 p.m., is to like and subscribe and to click the little bell icon so you don't miss any new upcoming videos. And always remember to put some comments into our comment section. We've noticed that since we've started doing the videos, we got a lot of comments on our first video, but we've not got comments on our
Yeah, they've
subsequent
slowed
videos.
down.
They've slowed down, which is fine because people got to get to know us first. But if you want to see us talk about something specific in an upcoming video, let us know in the comments, and we'll make sure that we put together a video for you.
Also, about the comments, if there's anything we say that you disagree with and you'd like to debate this with us, we'd love to hear that. And if there's anything that we say that you don't think we've elaborated on enough and you've got questions, again, no such thing as a stupid question. Ask away. Everybody, including us, learns by conversation and by
Absolutely.
asking questions and by
Yeah.
bouncing ideas off each other. So yes,
Mhm.
please do comment.
Yeah. And another thing too is that probably in the next video or two, we'll give you an opportunity to start asking some questions in the comments, like questions about us, about our backgrounds, about things that we've written, anything like that, tips or anything that you would like to know. And we'll do a Q&A video at some time in the future. So that feedback from you will definitely help us out. So we just want to help you be a better writer.
Can you imagine if one day an amazing author turns up, right, new on the scene, bestseller, the next J.R.R. Tolkien, whoever comes along, we read the book, we go, oh, that is amazing, that's brilliant. And then one day you see them interviewed on the telly and they say, well, yeah, actually, I got the confidence to write this because of two women on the internet, Chaz and Robin, they're called. You'll not have heard of them. It was just a little podcast. But I mean, how proud would you be if you
Yeah,
thought that you'd sparked off
absolutely.
an enthusiasm, or help somebody have the confidence to take that piece of writing they've already started and then gone, oh, I hate that, and then go back and we've said, oh no, go back to it a couple of weeks later.
Yeah, that's
You
it.
know, you never
That's
know,
the
do you?
thing. You just never know, do you?
So
Well, we're going to finish this one here
no,
and we're going to pick up next week with cliches. So, like I said, like and subscribe and click that little bell, and you'll be able to see when we upload our next video. And as we always say, just keep on writing.
good luck. See ya.
Bye.